This video describes German masquerader attempts in America to do a Putin on me and have me arrested for threatening celebrities on the internet. Hello friends, this is Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini, where I provide unique analysis of world events based on the unmasked truth that after surrender, Germany continued World War II clandestinely and became a killing machine. I also provide true news that you will find nowhere else. Germans are masters at lying and diabolical deception because they worship and are guided by the master deceiver in the universe, Satan the devil. They don't hide this fact any longer. Witness what they've done to Russia and President Putin. They provoked the Ukraine-Russia war as they have been behind most world conflicts since World War II, having started both world wars as well. German plans in alliance with China and other alliance partners are to start the Third World War against the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel. They wanted to make sure that Russia would be in no position to enter the war on the side of the United States, Britain, and Israel. The best way to do that was to engage Russia in a long term war. Therefore, they instigated the Ukraine Russia war with the help of the Nazi Zelensky of Ukraine, who agreed to let Germany install nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons to be used against Russia. They knew Russia would not allow that and would have to invade Ukraine to prevent that from happening. That's how Russia was provoked into war. Now witness their management of world propaganda in labeling Russia as the aggressor in an unprovoked war against Ukraine and demonizing President Putin of Russia. They have been able to do that with the help of German masqueraders who are persons of German ancestry living in white countries in Europe and North America, around the world, and their global allies whom they have groomed and nurtured, beginning with a few years after the end of Second World War. Incredible number of economic and other sanctions of all kinds possible have been imposed on Russia and its leaders because of the war, such that its economy has taken a beating. Finally, they have succeeded in inflicting another humiliation on President Putin by having the International Criminal Court issue an arrest warrant on Friday, March 17, 2023 for President Vladimir Putin, citing his alleged involvement in the abduction of Ukrainian children. No doubt as the war drags on, the Germans will continue to heap more humiliation on Russia and President Putin with the help of its global alliance partners, even though Russia faces an existential threat from German and Chinese nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons. For the past 2.5 years, I've been exposing German evil to the world through my YouTube and Facebook channels Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini. I have exposed their wickedness in instigating most wars around the world after the end of World War II, murdering 5 to 6 million white Americans of non-German ancestry by cremating them alive in electric crematoriums, medically murdering 3 to 4 million more, aborting 30 to 40 million white babies, and murdering millions more in serial killings by poisoning them in restaurants and their homes, and in any other ways they could devise, besides inflicting as much pain and suffering as they could on them. With their wars and forcing abortion, they have murdered 120 to 150 million human beings and potential human beings, primarily in white countries, since the end of World War II. That's how they've been a killing machine since then. I've also exposed their evil in slandering and harassing world leaders who don't submit to them. They used Jamal Khashoggi to slander the Saudi royal family. The Saudis found a perfect solution by hacking Jamal Khashoggi to pieces in the Saudi consulate in Turkey. President Putin also found a good solution by locking away Alexei Navalny in jail, giving him the Gulag treatment, which suffering German masqueraders in Russia, such as Lenin, Stalin, and others, inflicted on ethnic Russians in Russia. Then on May 23, 2021, Belarus hijacked a Ryanair passenger airliner to Minsk, Belarus, went on a flight from Greece to Lithuania to arrest the Belarusian dissident journalist Roman Protasevich and his Russian girlfriend Sofia Sapega, who was engaged in the same kind of scathing criticism of Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko. Protasevich now rots in a Belarusian jail. Of course, the Germans have used the European Union to impose sanctions on Belarus. With the way I have laid bare German wickedness, one would expect that they would not let me live in peace or continue my work unmolested. Germans never disappoint in that regard. With threats and the use of their dedicated German masquerader henchmen and allies, they continue to make attempts on my life on an almost daily basis. God has protected me so far. They also have a henchman in India, an 83-year-old economics professor whom they've long used to attack Indian politicians who are not subservient to the Germans, just as they used Jamal Khashoggi, Alexei Navalny, and Roman Protasevich. He was also my former professor at Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi. I had to point out the serious flaws in what he taught as an economics professor to stop him from going through with his plans to hurt my professional reputation. The plan was also to have him research my religious writings, which he has read, and find some flaws there. But he and the Germans realized that he did not have sufficient background in my religion and that it would be a Herculean effort to get that level of understanding before he could hope to find any flaws. Therefore, he and the Germans decided to abandon that effort. The Germans' next attempt was to use German masqueraders in God's church to attack my religious writings. The unfortunate part is that all of them have declared their allegiance and commitment to the German masquerader side by murdering a member of God's church who was in their religious and spiritual care. I had to point out that for their crime, God's judgment on them is to be exterminated man, woman, and child, as prophesied in Ezekiel 9 verses 5 to 7 and interpreted by one of their own, Gerald Alfari, head of the Philadelphia Church of God. Ezekiel 9 verses 5 to 7 state, "And to the others he said in my hearing, Go after him through the city and smite. Let not your eyes spare, neither have pity. Slay utterly old and young, both maids, that means don't even spare young married girls, both maids and little children, that means don't spare even infants, and women. But come not near any man upon whom is the mark, that is, us in God's church who sigh and cry because of their abominable deeds. And begin at my sanctuary." Sanctuary is a symbol for God's church and prophecy. Then they began at the ancient men. The ancient men here means the most senior leaders, evangelists, and ministers in God's church, which were before the house. God's house also signifies God's true church. And he said unto them, Defile the house, and fill the courts with the slain. Go forth. And they went forth and slew in the city. When German masqueraders and their allies in God's church learned that they can be put to death any time because of the crime they've already committed, they gave up their plans to use lies and distortion to slander me. I also pointed out that many attempts were made by German masqueraders in God's church, the same people who were to try and slander me, to slander Mr. Herbert W. Armstrong, through whom God founded the modern era of his church. They said that the main ideas in his book, United States and Britain and Prophecy, which was most instrumental in building God's church, that they were copied from another Christian author. I exposed that as an attempt to slander Mr. Armstrong because the main thrust of his book was future prophecies, which the Christian author had no clue about. But to lay the historical background of the American and British people, Mr. Armstrong had to use information that is common knowledge and was not any special knowledge known exclusively to the Christian author. Then I pointed out that I had read the Christian author's book, originally published in 1902, more than 2 decades ago, and that I also recently downloaded a copy of it from the internet. The recent copy had been altered to incorporate all that Mr. Armstrong had written. That exposed the masqueraders' attempts to discredit Mr. Armstrong as pure, blatant slander. In addition, I also pointed out that the Christian author's book did not contain knowledge that he originated. What he wrote had been known to British royal historians more than 70 years before he published his book. Thus, the attempts to slander me to mar my professional reputation have also fallen flat. Instead, many more of the lying and disingenuous ways of the masqueraders have been exposed in the process. The latest attempt of the German masqueraders to stop me from exposing their evils is to have me arrested and locked up in jail for some years. Over the past 60 years, German masqueraders and their allies got away with cremating 5 to 6 million white adults and children of non German ancestry alive in electric crematoriums and medically murdering 3 to 4 million more besides uh, uh, food poisonings in homes and restaurants, serial killings, and other disappearances. The number of people who disappeared was so large that a National Center for Missing and Exploited Children was started in 1984 by the US Congress. The problem of murders of white adults and or children of non-German ancestry still exists. The murderers are German masqueraders and their many minority allies. Some of the murders are committed with extreme forms of torture and brutality. Because the problem still exists, the only way to deter such murderers is to treat them with equal brutality so that they know they cannot get away with their crimes. The normal policing and justice system cannot be used to bring such criminals to justice because of the delay and expense it would take. Can you imagine the cost involved in catching a murderer, trying to gather evidence to convict him of murder, and even if the conviction is successful, the jury may not recommend the death penalty and then keeping him in prison for 20 to 40 more years. Just imagine going through that process with millions of murderers. The numbers are so large, so staggering, that the only solution is to deal with such killers extrajudicially and render swift justice. Ahmaud Arbery's case tells us that it is difficult to use civilians to render swift justice. Therefore, in most cases, the police have to be used to summarily execute the murderers and treat them as brutally as they treated their victims. Unless the murderers and their killings are exposed and publicized, such murders will only multiply at an increasingly faster pace. Obviously, the government cannot expose extrajudicial executions. If the government gave such information to a private citizen who exposed the murderers, German masqueraders will devote extraordinary resources to kill that private citizen, to set him as an example so that they can clandestinely continue their nefarious agenda of exterminating whites of non German ancestry and their allies in the United States and remain hidden. That's why I have had to step in with my videos to expose the murderous activities of German masqueraders and their minority allies. The reason I have agreed to step in is that attempts on my life are being made anyway, daily, and and at as fast a pace and frequency as they can. The frequency of the attempts cannot be increased any further. That's why I'm glad to provide this service to a non-masquerader side to deter murderers. I also need to expose these nefarious activities because I am a continuing victim. I need to point out that masqueraders and their allies, particularly African Americans, are murdering innocent white American adults and or children of non-German ancestry, while our side is killing only murderers, particularly those who are still continuing to commit crimes. No innocent masquerader or their ally is in any danger from our side. The masqueraders are particularly miffed because some of the super celebrity murderers I have exposed are unable to keep earning to their former potential, which only contributes to the pot of money masqueraders can use to reward more murderers. Examples of such super celebrities are Tiger Woods, Deborah Lee, Hayden Panettiere, Celine Dion, Justin and Hailey Bieber, who have committed murders but have not yet been brought to justice. In my videos, I have stated that such celebrities await execution for the murders they committed. Now, there is nothing wrong in stating that murderers should be brought to justice by being put to death for their crime. It is not a violation of any law. It is not a threat issued against any celebrity. It is simply stating how murderers should be dealt with, even if they are celebrities. In fact, celebrities who commit murder should be dealt with swiftly because the potential for them to murder more innocent people is even greater. The masqueraders have now thought of a new scheme to silence me. They are trying to pressure various police chiefs in and around the Tampa Bay area and Hillsborough County areas where I live to arrest me for issuing threats in my videos to celebrities such as Tiger Woods, Deborah Lee, Hayden Panettiere, Celine Dion, Justin and Hailey Bieber on the internet. This follows the recent news of a 38-year-old New Jersey man, Richard Golden, being taken into custody after investigators said he threatened to kill the Volusia County Sheriff Mike Chitwood on an online forum after the sheriff hosted a news conference to address anti-Semitic material that surfaced around the county. Lying and twisting the truth is the stock in trade of the German masquerader. From my videos, it should be clear to everyone that I state that the police and law enforcement are being used to bring the murders to justice. Here is how masqueraders twist the truth. Richard Golden was arrested for making threats against Sheriff Mike Chitwood, in which he would harm the sheriff. By saying that celebrity murderers should be brought to justice, I was in no way implying that I was going to carry out the justice myself by killing the celebrities. They know such a notion is laughable, but they will make any atrocious claim if it serves their purpose. First, a few facts about me. I'm nearly 72 years old, quite small in height, with a slight frame, weighing only between 108 to 112 pounds. Imagine me trying to take on Tiger Woods, if I will ever be able to locate him in person. I'm extremely busy with my video postings on my YouTube and Facebook channels, such that I hardly have much spare time, leave alone trying to find time to stalk celebrities first before harming them in any way. My funds are extremely limited, such that I'm barely surviving. I don't have any money to spend on stalking any celebrities. Besides, I'm monitored 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. All my activities are known all the time. You can now imagine how ridiculous the masquerader accusation looks. I own no gun, bow and arrows, knife, sword, or any other weapon of any kind. I have not handled a gun in my life except for firing antiquated rifles in India a couple of times more than 5 decades ago in high school while being a member of the National Cadet Corps for 12 to 15-year-olds. I don't know how to use a handgun. I'm not financed by anyone. This makes the masquerader accusation that I am threatening celebrities look even more ridiculously foolish. I have never violently attacked anyone in my life for any reason. I remember fighting with someone only once in my life in self defense in India when I was about 12 to 13 years old and was attacked by a kid of my age in a park. My former church, United Church of God, will vouch for the fact that I am a conscientious objector and will not enroll in the military or law enforcement, as these jobs require killing someone. From my videos, at the very least, it should be clear that I take my religion very seriously. Here is the full statement of the fundamental belief or doctrine of God's church concerning military service, war, and killing from the booklet Fundamental Beliefs of the United Church of God. This is what it states. We believe that Christians are forbidden by the commandments of God from taking human life directly or indirectly, and that bearing arms is contrary to this fundamental belief. Therefore, we believe that Christians should not voluntarily become engaged in military service. If they were involuntarily engaged in military service, we believe that they should refuse conscientiously to bear arms and, to the extent possible, refuse to come under military authority. This is based on Exodus 20, verse 13, Matthew 5, verses 21 to 22, 1 Corinthians 7, verses 21 to 23, and Acts 5, verse 29. The way of God is the way of love, sacrifice, and sharing, as stated in Romans 12, verses 1 and 10. The teaching of God for an individual regarding the taking of human life is summed up in the sixth commandment, which says, "You shall not murder." Jesus Christ repeated a great principle when he said, "You shall love your neighbor as yourself," as stated in Matthew 22, verse 39. And the Apostle Paul said, "Love does no harm to a neighbor," as stated in Romans 13, verse 10. Jesus stated, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight," stated in John 18, verse 36. In the Old Testament period, Israel was a kingdom of this world, yet with God as king. It exercised civil authority at God's command, including the power of earthly warfare. That time and situation has ended. The Church of God today is a spiritual nation, or spiritual Israel. As Christians, we have come out of darkness, from the power of Satan to the power of the kingdom of God, stated in Acts 26:18 and Colossians 1:11 to 13. That kingdom is not found in any national governments today. Rather, we now have a citizenship in heaven, Philippians 3, verse 20, being ambassadors of a kingdom that is yet to be established throughout this earth. Therefore, we do not fight an earthly warfare. Consider that if Christians had the responsibility of taking up arms for their respective countries, then a war between these countries would have Christians fighting other Christians, an obviously untenable circumstance, as Christ's disciples are to be characterized by their love for one another, stated in John 13:34 to 35. And that, as already pointed out, means doing no harm in Romans 13:10. We are to emulate the actions of Jesus, as stated in 1 Peter 4, verse 1 and 1 Peter 13 to 16. He did not respond in kind when he was reviled, and he did not threaten when he suffered. He suffered for doing good and endured it patiently because of his desire to please God, as stated in 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 19 to 24. Jesus taught that to be angry with our brother can result in sin, Matthew 5:21 to 22. We are to love even our enemies and do good to those who hate us, Matthew 5:43 to 44. We are not to avenge ourselves. Vengeance belongs to God, Romans 12, verse 19. Our warfare as Christians is in the spiritual arena, Ephesians 6:10 to 20. And we do not war against flesh, 2 Corinthians 10:3, but against wicked spirits in high places, Ephesians 6:12. We are to be faithful spiritual leaders, soldiers of Jesus Christ, 2 Timothy 2:3 to 4. This is our calling in life. As such, a Christian must at times face a conflict between man's laws and the laws of Almighty God. When that happens, the Christian must obey the laws of God, which always take precedence, as in Acts 5:29 and 1 Peter 2:13 to 14. In fact, we should try to avoid conflicts if we can, in Romans 12:18, and joining the military is not conducive to that. In most countries, the military has its own rules and regulations. A person in the military is not free to decide what he or she can do, but is under the authority of superiors and must do what they say or risk severe consequences. The wisest course of action is to refrain from putting oneself in such a position, since a person in the military is subject to its authority and may be called upon to take human life or violate other areas or principles of God's law. Paul tells us not to become slaves of men in 1 Corinthians 7, verse 23. Therefore, the United Church of God, an international association, supports the conscientious objection of its members to military service and war. That's the reason I don't own a gun or any other type of weapon that could be used to fight or kill anyone. As far as attempts on my life are concerned, I follow God's instruction in Romans 12, verse 19. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. I know hundreds of people who have made attempts on my life, and given a chance, they will not hesitate to make as many more attempts on my life as they can. Over the past 40 years in the United States, I have not bought a gun to threaten anyone or to take away anyone's life. That proves that German masqueraders are lying and twisting the truth that I am personally threatening celebrities and pose a danger to them by taking the law into my own hands. But I have no hesitation in saying that authorities should bring the murderers to justice by executing them, even if they are super celebrities, because they will continue to pose a danger to the lives of others as long as they live. Therefore, I request the police chiefs in Tampa and all the nearby counties to evaluate the situation fairly. I am performing an incredibly valuable service with my videos at the risk of personal danger to expose murderers, to deter further murders to the extent possible. But I personally pose no danger to the life of anyone, nor am I personally threatening anyone. Masqueraders continue to encourage as well as force people to commit murder with threats, especially those who have already committed murder and can be ordered to make more attempts. For example, in my apartment complex, whenever I walked around, a man used to follow me around in his vehicle with a handgun in hand. But God continued to protect me. Just for making attempts on my life, he was rewarded with a used van and new furniture. He was forced to continue stalking me for 3 to 4 years and sitting in his van with the engine running with a gun in his hand whenever I took a walk or jogged. Since his attempts did not succeed, he was asked to move away. Now, a woman with a good looking, fairly new Mercedes has been told to move in, and she stalks me now whenever I'm jogging about 3 days a week in an adjoining vacant lot, about an acre in measurement, owned by the city. To have been rewarded with a Mercedes, she must have succeeded in murdering someone. She can be ordered as many times as needed to commit murder. The point is that celebrities and others who have committed murder must be exposed so that they know they are being watched, so that they don't commit more murders. But masqueraders will continue to use threats to force them to commit murder attempts as needed. History of conscientious objector status in the United States shows that leading members of God's church through the centuries have been strongly responsible for influencing the passage of this law in many governments, including in the United States. It has been the policy of God's true church since its founding by Jesus Christ in the time of the original apostles. In the modern era of God's church, the policy was continued by Mr. Armstrong. It is a fundamental doctrine of God's true church, as explained very well in the quote from the Fundamental Beliefs of the United Church of God. I believe and practice what God restored to his church through Mr. Armstrong and consider not taking up arms to take a human life as God's will and command for his true church and for me. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please continue to watch my videos on important world events, World War III watch, politics, international business, how Bible prophecy is playing an important role in world affairs, advice on health and medical problems, and much more for in-depth and insightful analysis. Please also subscribe to my YouTube and Facebook channels Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini to view and get information on the latest videos.